My name is Buddy, and if you think being a dog means I don't understand humans, you're very wrong. Actually, I think I understand you better than you understand each other, and today, while my tail nervously wags under the dining room table, I need to tell a story that has been weighing heavy on my furry heart for weeks. It was a typical March Sunday in Chicago. The air was crisp, carrying that lingering winter chill that characterizes the Midwest during late winter. Through the living room window, I could see the bare oak branches swaying lazily in our backyard, where I used to chase squirrels when I was a puppy. The ceiling fan spun at maximum speed, making that familiar noise that always calmed me during afternoon naps. In the kitchen, Sarah, my favorite human and little Petey's mom, had been stirring pots since early morning. The aroma of slow-cooked pot roast mixed with the smell of barbecue ribs coming from the patio made me drool more than usual. Mike, Petey's dad, was at the grill, sweating and laughing with a beer in his hand, trying to impress his in-laws with his questionable culinary skills. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters. The paternal grandparents arrived punctually at 12:30 as they always did on Sundays. Grandma Carol, 68 years old, with her hair always impeccable and that strong rose perfume that made my nose itch, greeted everyone with kisses on the cheek. Grandpa Robert, retired from the Postal Service, brought with him the scent of Bengay and the weight of someone who believes that old-school discipline was better. "Hi, Grandma. Hi, Grandpa." Petey ran to hug them with that 8-year-old energy of a kid who still believes Sunday family dinners mean happiness. His brown eyes sparkled with anticipation, and I could feel his genuine joy through my keen sense of smell. I approached slowly, my tail wagging politely. I'd always been a well-behaved golden retriever, one of those breeds humans consider perfect for families. I rested my head against Grandma Carol's leg, hoping for a pat that never came with the same warmth she showed Petey. "This dog is getting fatter, isn't he, Sarah?" was her first comment, while discreetly moving my head away from her leg. "You need to watch his food intake." Mike laughed from the grill. "Come on, Carol. Buddy's at his ideal weight. He's just entering his prime years, just like us." Lunch was served on the dining room table, the one Sarah had inherited from her grandmother and only used on special occasions. The white lace tablecloth contrasted with the blue china plates, creating a solemn atmosphere that always made me anxious. The wooden chairs creaked under the adults' weight, and the familiar sound of family gathering echoed through the air. Petey sat in the chair next to me, our strategic position as always. He knew I was there, patiently waiting for any little piece of food that might accidentally fall to the floor. It was our silent ritual, our special connection. "Peter, sit up straight in your chair," Grandpa Robert ordered before everyone was even fully seated. "Real men don't fidget at the table." The boy tried to straighten up, but at 8 years old, staying completely still during a family meal is nearly impossible. I could feel his tension through the scent emanating from his skin, that sour smell children give off when they're nervous. The initial conversation flowed through the usual topics: Mike's work at the bank, the neighborhood gossip Grandma Carol always brought, the rising gas prices. I was strategically lying between Petey's chair and the wall, watching every movement, every expression, every change in tone of voice. "Petey, eat properly. Stop playing with your food." Sarah's voice cut through the air when she noticed her son was building little mountains with his mashed potatoes. "I am eating, Mom," the boy murmured, trying to defend his small distraction. "In my day," Grandpa Robert began, and I already knew nothing good would come after those 3 words. Children ate quietly and said thank you. They didn't make a spectacle at the table. I felt Petey shrink in his chair. His little foot touched my belly, seeking comfort. It was a code we'd developed over the years. Whenever he felt insecure, he'd reach for me, and I was always there. "Dad, he's just a child." Sarah tried to defend her son, but her voice carried that hesitation of someone who doesn't want to cause conflict. "Children need to learn respect from an early age," Grandma Carol insisted. "Look how he's got gravy all over his shirt. No manners." It was true. Petey had gotten a little gravy on himself, but it was completely normal for a child. I myself had gotten messy with much worse things, and nobody made such a big deal. The atmosphere at the table began to get heavy. I could feel the waves of tension emanating from each person present. Mike tried to maintain good humor, making jokes that nobody found funny. Sarah chewed in silence, her eyes alternating between her plate and her son. The grandparents exchanged disapproving looks. And Petey just wanted that meal to end soon. "Grandpa, want to see my new drawing?" He tried to change the subject, pulling a crumpled paper from his shorts pocket. "Not now, boy. We're eating," came Grandpa Robert's dry response. I saw Petey's small shoulders fall, and my heart tightened. It was always like this on Sundays. The boy would arrive full of expectations, wanting to share his small weekly achievements, and always left disappointed. I stood up slowly and put my head on his lap, under the table. It was my way of saying, "I care about your drawing. I always care about everything that's important to you." He ran his small hand over my ear, and I felt that calmed him a little. It was in moments like these that I realized how much my presence meant to him. The March rain began hitting the dining room window, that heavy, noisy Midwestern rain that transforms Chicago afternoons. The sound should have been relaxing, but today it only increased the tension floating in the air. "This weather doesn't help at all," commented Grandma Carol, looking out the window. "At home, I'd be watching my 6 o'clock show right now." It was a clear hint that she wanted to leave soon, but Sunday dinners had their protocols. First dessert, then coffee. Only then could they think about saying goodbye. Sarah brought the apple pie she'd made the day before, the one that always was a hit and earned sincere compliments even from the most critical in-laws. But today, not even dessert could lighten the heavy atmosphere. Hit the like button on this video if you also have memories of complicated family meals. And it was then, while Petey struggled to eat his slice of pie without dropping it on his shirt, that everything began to fall apart. He was concentrating, trying to get the forkful to his mouth when a small piece fell to the floor. Instinctively, I did what any dog would do. I got up to grab the piece of pie. "Look at that!" exclaimed Grandma Carol, pointing at me. "The dog is smarter than the child. At least he cleans up what falls." Grandpa Robert laughed loudly, hitting the table with his hand. "That's right. Even Buddy has better manners. At least he obeys the first time you tell him something." And then came the phrase that would mark that Sunday forever. The phrase that would echo in my canine memory for weeks. "Even the dog listens better than you, Peter." The silence that followed was deafening. Louder than the rain, heavier than the humid air. I saw Petey shrink in his chair, his eyes filling with tears he desperately tried to hold back. Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Mike stopped chewing. And me? I stood there with that little piece of pie in my mouth, realizing I had inadvertently become part of something that deeply hurt my favorite boy. In that moment, I understood it wasn't a compliment. It was a cruel comparison that placed an 8-year-old child below an animal in the family hierarchy. The tear that ran down Petey's face was like a stab to my furry heart. I immediately dropped the pie and put my paw on his leg, trying to say with gestures what my barks could never express. "You're worth more than 1,000 obedient dogs. You're worth more than anything in this world." But the adults kept laughing, unaware of the wound they had just opened in a child's soul. The days that followed that Sunday were different, not the kind of different you notice immediately, like when my humans rearrange the furniture, or when Sarah changes the type of kibble she gives me. It was a subtle different, that only someone with my sharp sense of smell and my ability to observe every detail of family routine could detect. Petey woke up quieter. Every morning for 2 years since I'd arrived at this house when he was 6, our routine was sacred. He'd come running down the hardwood stairs that creaked under his bare feet, find me in the kitchen drinking water, and pat my head while saying, "Good morning, buddy." His voice always carried that morning joy of children, that energy that made my tail wag automatically. But that Monday in March, when he came down for breakfast, his steps were measured, cautious. He didn't run. He didn't call my name. He just walked past me, gave me a quick pat on the head, and sat at the table without saying a word. Sarah was preparing the traditional breakfast, fresh bagels from Goldman's Bakery, cream cheese, jam, and milk with chocolate syrup. The familiar aroma should have been comforting, but there was something in the air that made me uneasy. It was the scent of sadness, that sour, slightly metallic odor people give off when they're carrying grief. "Good morning, sweetheart," Sarah greeted her son with that loving voice she always used, but even I could tell she was forcing a more cheerful tone. "Did you sleep well?" "Yeah," was Petey's monosyllabic response as he nibbled his bagel without appetite. Mike appeared in the kitchen wearing his light blue dress shirt, the one from the bank where he worked, adjusting his tie around his neck. He always made a point of kissing his son's head before leaving for work, but today he seemed hesitant. "Hey there, champ. How's that school project about animals coming along?" He tried to start a conversation, referring to the assignment Petey was working on about golden retriever dogs, obviously inspired by me. "I already turned it in," Petey lied. I knew it was a lie because I'd seen him hiding the notebook under his bed on Sunday night, right after we returned from that disastrous meal. Mike and Sarah exchanged a worried look over their son's head. It was the kind of silent communication couples develop over time, and even I, being a dog, could interpret it. "Something's wrong with our son." The school was 3 blocks from our house, on Maple Street, a route Petey always walked with enthusiasm, stopping to play with other dogs he'd encounter along the way. I accompanied him to the gate every morning, my self-appointed function as guardian and best friend. But that morning he walked with his head down the entire time. When he encountered Mrs. Patterson walking her chocolate poodle, Luna, he just waved timidly, instead of stopping to pet the dog, as he always did. "Hi, Petey. Where's all that usual energy?" asked Mrs. Patterson, a 70-year-old woman who always chatted with the neighborhood children. "Hi, Mrs. Patterson," he mumbled, without stopping. At the school gate, I watched him enter with slumped shoulders, as if carrying an invisible weight on his back. Lincoln Elementary School buzzed with the typical energy of classes starting, children running, shouting, laughing, but Petey simply disappeared into the crowd without his characteristic liveliness. If you're relating to this story about family relationships, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I returned home with a strange feeling in my chest. Dogs have a special intuition for detecting when something's wrong with our favorite humans, and my instincts were on high alert. Sarah spent the entire day tidying and rearranging the house, a habit she developed when anxious. I followed her from room to room, watching her fold and refold the towels in the linen closet, reorganize the books on the shelf, clean windows that were already clean. "Buddy, do you think I did something wrong?" she suddenly asked me, stopping in the middle of the living room and sitting on the couch. Her hands trembled slightly as she petted my head. Obviously, I couldn't answer with words, but I rested my head in her lap and looked directly into her eyes. It was my way of saying, "The problem isn't you, Sarah. The problem was what happened yesterday." Tears began rolling down her face. I should have defended Peter better. I should have said something when my in-laws, when they compared my son to you. She paused, wiped her nose with the back of her hand, and continued. "Not that being compared to you is bad, buddy. You're wonderful. But Peter is a child. He needs to feel valued for who he is, not diminished by comparisons." The phone rang, interrupting our silent conversation. It was the school principal. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Sarah. This is Miss Johnson, Peter's teacher. I'd like to speak with you about his behavior today in class." I felt Sarah's body tense immediately. Did he do something wrong? Actually, it's the opposite. He's very quiet. He didn't participate in any activities, didn't play at recess, just sat alone under the oak tree in the courtyard. That's not typical of Peter. Did something happen at home? Sarah closed her eyes and sighed deeply. "Miss Johnson, we had a family dinner yesterday that wasn't very pleasant. I think Peter got upset." "I understand. How about we schedule a meeting this week? I think it's important to closely monitor any behavioral changes in children." When Petey returned from school at 3:30, I was waiting at the gate as always. But instead of the wide smile and warm hug I received every day, he just patted my head and mumbled an almost inaudible, "Hi." We entered the house together, and he went straight to his room. I followed him, obviously. He threw himself on the bed in his uniform and everything, hugged his pillow and stared at the ceiling. "Buddy," he said after several minutes of silence, "do you think I'm a bad kid? If my canine heart could have broken into pieces, it would have been, at that moment." I jumped onto the bed and lay beside him, putting my head on his small chest. "Grandpa and Grandma said that even you are better than me, that you obey more, that you have better manners." His voice was breaking. "Sometimes I think you guys would be happier if I were like you, if I were a dog." I lifted my head and looked directly into his brown eyes, those same eyes that sparkled with joy when he told me about his day at school, when he showed me his drawings, when he invented crazy games in the backyard. At that moment I was certain I needed to do something, But what can a dog do when he sees a child diminishing himself because of cruel words spoken by adults who should protect him? Dinner was a silent event. Sarah had prepared chicken and dumplings, Petey's favorite dish. Normally, he would have eaten 2 servings and even asked for more. But that night he just played with the food on his plate. "Peter, aren't you going to eat?" asked Mike, trying to sound casual. "I'm not hungry." "But it's chicken and dumplings, son. You love chicken and dumplings." "I know, Dad, I'm not hungry." Mike looked at Sarah with that expression of, "What do we do now?" They clearly didn't know how to handle the situation. "Peter," Sarah tried a different approach. "How about we talk about what happened yesterday at dinner?" The boy stopped playing with his food and looked at his mom. "What's there to talk about? They're right. Even Buddy is better than me." "That's not true, Peter." Mike's voice came out louder than intended. "You're a wonderful child, smart, caring, creative, but I don't obey the first time. I get my clothes dirty when I eat. I don't sit still at the table." Petey enumerated his flaws with the cruel precision of a child who had internalized every criticism. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the importance of words in children's development. It was at that moment that something happened that changed everything. Petey dropped a piece of chicken on the floor, right next to me. Instinctively, like any dog would, I bent down to grab it. "No, Buddy!" Petey shouted, stopping me from eating. "You can't eat that, it'll make you sick. Chicken with seasonings isn't good for dogs." He got up from his chair, grabbed a paper towel, cleaned the floor, and threw the chicken in the trash. Then he crouched beside me and petted my head. "You're very special, Buddy. You deserve good things, not scraps that fall on the floor." Mike and Sarah fell silent, watching the scene. And it was there, in that simple moment, that they understood something fundamental. Their 8-year-old son had more compassion, care, and responsibility than many adults. He worried about my well-being even while being emotionally hurt. "Peter," said Sarah with a broken voice, "you just proved you're an extraordinary boy. You cared about Buddy even while feeling sad. That shows the size of your heart." "Exactly, son. You took care of Buddy like a responsible adult would. And you know why? Because you have something that can't be taught. You have genuine love." Petey looked at his parents, then at me, and for the first time since the previous Sunday, a small smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Do you really think I'm a good boy?" "The best boy in the world," the parents answered in unison. That night, Petey slept hugging me, and for the first time in 3 days, I smelled the scent of peace returning to emanate from his skin. There was still a long road to completely heal the wounds left by the grandparents' words, but an important first step had been taken. That family was learning that true love isn't measured by blind obedience, but by genuine gestures of care and affection. Thursday morning arrived with that typical Chicago heat at the end of winter. I was lying on the patio, watching sparrows build nests in the apple tree in our yard, when I heard a conversation that would change the course of the next few days. Mike was having breakfast and talking on the phone with someone from work. "Hey, John, it's Mike. I won't be able to make it in today. Urgent family issue." "Yeah, I'll make up the hours tomorrow." Sarah was also on her cell phone, probably canceling her appointments for the day. She worked as a hairstylist at a salon in downtown Chicago and rarely missed work. Her clients were very loyal. "Hello, Patricia? It's Sarah. I have to cancel all my clients today. Family emergency. Can you reschedule everyone for next week?" Petey was still sleeping when his parents sat at the kitchen table for a serious conversation. I positioned myself strategically under the table. My dog detective function never rested. "Sarah, we can't let this slide," Mike began, nervously stirring his coffee cup. "Our son is suffering because of words my own parents said. That's not fair." "I know, honey. I saw him crying into his pillow last night when he thought I wasn't watching." Sarah's voice was filled with maternal pain. "He's feeling inferior to Buddy, a dog. How did we get to this point?" Mike sighed deeply. "My parents are from the generation that believes children should be seen and not heard. They raised me and my siblings with, because I said so, and constant comparisons. And look how you all turned out," Sarah observed. "You have trouble expressing feelings, your brother has panic attacks, and your sister hasn't spoken to them in 2 years. It was the first time I'd heard Sarah being so direct about the in-laws. Usually she avoided confrontations, but the situation had crossed her limits. "You're right," Mike admitted, "and I swore I'd be different with Peter. That he'd grow up knowing he's loved unconditionally." "Then we're going to do something," Sarah declared with determination. Today, they went to get Petey from his room. He was awake, playing distractedly with a Hot Wheels car. but without his usual enthusiasm. "Peter, sweetheart," Sarah said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Dad and I are taking the day off work. Do you know why?" "Because I did something wrong?" was his first reaction, a response that broke his parents' hearts. "No, son. Because others did something wrong to you," Mike explained. "And we're going to fix it." The first stop was the office of Dr. Patricia, a child psychologist a friend of Sarah's had recommended. The office was in Lincoln Park, in an old building with a noisy elevator, but the environment was welcoming. I obviously couldn't go in, so I stayed in the car with Mike while Sarah accompanied Petey. But through the window I could see them in the waiting room, Petey playing with some toys while Sarah filled out forms. "Do you think we're doing the right thing, buddy?" Mike asked, petting my head. "Taking an 8-year-old to a psychologist because of an unfortunate comment from his grandparents?" I looked directly into his eyes and made that low sound golden retrievers make when we want to calm someone. It was my way of saying, "Yes, you're doing the right thing." Words hurt as much as physical injuries, sometimes even more. After an hour, they came out of the office. Petey seemed lighter, with a shy smile on his face. Sarah carried a folder with some materials the psychologist had given her. "So, how was it?" Mike asked. "The doctor was really nice," Petey said. "She explained that sometimes adults say things without thinking, and that doesn't mean they're right." "What else did she tell you?" Sarah encouraged. "That I'm special in my own way. That I don't need to be like Buddy to be a good person." He paused and looked at me. "But that Buddy is also special in his own way." The second stop was at Pet Paradise, a small but well-stocked store on Michigan Avenue. Petey was confused when they went in there. "Why are we here?" "You'll see," Mike said mysteriously. They bought a complete canine grooming kit. Special shampoo, brush, nail clippers, and even a new bandana for me. But what caught my attention most was when Petey personally chose a new toy, a tennis ball with an internal whistle. "This one's for Buddy," he announced proudly, "because he deserves new things too." The third stop was at Barnes & Noble, a large bookstore with a special children's section. Petey was ecstatic. He'd always loved books, a trait he inherited from Sarah. "Choose 3 books you want," Sarah said. "3? Anyone's?" "Anyone's." He chose a book about dinosaurs, another about science experiments for kids, and the third surprised me. "How to Care for Your Canine Best Friend." "Why did you choose that one, Peter?" Mike asked. "Because I want to take better care of Buddy. If Grandma and Grandpa think he's better behaved than me, then I'm going to learn to be an even better owner for him." "Leave a comment telling us about the special relationship you have with your pets." The fourth stop was the most important. Back home, but with a specific mission. Mike picked up the phone and dialed his parents' number. "Hello, Dad? It's Mike. We need to talk. Today. This afternoon. It's about Peter. Did something happen to the boy?" Grandpa Robert's worried voice echoed through the speakerphone. "Yes, Dad. Something happened to my son last Sunday, at our dining table." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Oh, Mike, you're being too dramatic. It was just a little joke." "Dad, my 8-year-old son spent 3 days thinking he's inferior to a dog because of that little joke. That's not acceptable." All right, we'll come over at 3 p.m. While waiting for the grandparents to arrive, Petey gave me a bath for the first time in his life. It was a hilarious and wet experience. He got more soaped up than I did. The kitchen turned into a lake, and I came out of the bath looking like a foamy polar bear. "Look how good Buddy smells," he said proudly, while drying me with a fluffy towel. "Now you're even more handsome." Sarah watched the scene with tears in her eyes. "Peter, you have a very special way with Buddy. He stays calm and happy when you take care of him." "Really? Do you think I'm a good caretaker?" "The best I've ever seen." At 3 p.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. Grandpa Robert and Grandma Carol arrived with that military punctuality that characterized them. Petey ran to hug them as always. But this time there was hesitation in the air. "Hi, Grandpa. Hi, Grandma. Want to see how good Buddy smells? I gave him a bath." "That's nice, sweetie." Grandma Carol responded distractedly, clearly uncomfortable with the reason for the urgent summons. Mike and Sarah positioned themselves in the living room so that Petey was between them. A protective formation I recognized immediately. "Dad, Mom," Mike began. "Do you remember what you said last Sunday during lunch?" "Mike, son, we say lots of things." Grandpa Robert tried to dodge. "You said that even Buddy obeyed better than Peter. You laughed at him and made a comparison between my son and my dog." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Grandma Carol fidgeted with her necklace nervously, and Grandpa Robert cleared his throat. "Look, Mike, if we hurt the boy—" "It's not if," Sarah interrupted firmly. "You did hurt him. Peter spent 3 days believing he was inferior to an animal, an 8-year-old child. Petey was sitting on the floor next to me, petting my freshly washed head. I could feel his tension, but also a kind of relief, seeing his parents defending him. "We didn't mean to," Grandma Carol tried. "Intent doesn't matter when the result is a hurt child," Mike said. "Peter is my son. He's intelligent, caring, creative. He took care of Buddy today with a gentleness many adults don't have. And another thing," Sarah added, "Buddy isn't just an obedient dog. He's a member of this family. He has feelings, personality. It's not fair to use him as a parameter for disparaging comparison." Grandpa Robert got up from the armchair and walked to where Petey was sitting. For the first time in years, I saw an expression of genuine regret on the grandfather's face. "Peter," he said, crouching down to his grandson's height. "Grandpa said something very ugly last Sunday, and Grandpa was wrong, very wrong." "It's okay, Grandpa," Petey murmured, always generous. "No, it's not okay. Grandpa hurt you, and that's not fair. You're a wonderful boy, and Buddy is very lucky to have you as a friend." Grandma Carol also approached. "Peter, Grandma also apologizes. We sometimes forget how hard it is to be a child." That afternoon marked the beginning of an important change in family dynamics. The grandparents didn't transform overnight, but they began to understand that their words had the power to build or destroy a child's self-esteem. And Petey began to understand that he was loved exactly as he was. 2 weeks had passed since the difficult conversation with the grandparents, and I can say that the atmosphere at home had changed completely. It was as if a heavy cloud had lifted, allowing the rays of sunshine to enter through the windows of our house in Lincoln Park again. Petey woke up Monday morning with an energy I hadn't seen in a long time. He came down the stairs running, in that messy, noisy way I'd missed so much, and hugged me tight. "Good morning, Buddy. Today's going to be a special day." His excitement was contagious. My tail wagged so hard I almost knocked over the water bowl. Sarah watched from the kitchen with a wide smile on her face. "Why is today going to be special, sweetheart?" she asked, serving breakfast. "Because Miss Johnson said everyone gets to present a project about my best friend to the whole class. And I'm going to talk about Buddy." Mike almost choked on his coffee. "Best friend project? And you chose Buddy?" "Of course. He's my real best friend. He never judges me, always listens to me, and takes care of me when I'm sad. What better friend is there?" I felt my furry heart expand with pride. After everything we'd been through, being chosen as Petey's best friend was the greatest honor a dog could receive. "When are you presenting?" Sarah wanted to know. "Friday. But I need to do really cool research about golden retrievers, take photos of Buddy and... Hey, can I bring him to school?" "Bring Buddy to school?" Mike raised his eyebrows. "Miss Johnson said whoever wants can bring something special related to their best friend. Johnny's bringing the bike his brother gave him. Anna's bringing letters her cousin writes from California. We need to talk to the school administration first," Sarah pondered. "But I think it might work." The week that followed was one of the busiest I'd ever experienced. Petey transformed into a little investigative journalist, documenting every aspect of my canine life. On Tuesday, he accompanied me during my entire morning routine. With a small notebook and colored pencil, he wrote down everything. 7 a.m. Buddy drinks water and eats kibble. 7:15 a.m. Goes potty in the yard, always in the same spot. 7:30 a.m. Plays with ball for 10 minutes. 8 a.m. Lies in the sun on the patio. The precision of his observations surprised me. I never imagined an 8-year-old could be so detailed and scientific in his approach. Wednesday was photo day. Sarah lent him her phone, and Petey became my personal photographer. Shots from every angle. Sleeping, eating, playing, running in the yard, sunbathing. "Buddy looks serious for the photo," he'd say, trying to make me pose like a professional model. "Now smile." "No, dogs don't smile like that." "Okay, just stay normal." Some photos came out blurry because my tail wouldn't stop wagging. Others were out of focus because I couldn't stay still. But there was one special photo that came out perfect. Me and Petey lying on the backyard grass, him hugging my neck, both of us looking at the camera with completely relaxed and happy expressions. "This is the best photo of all," he declared proudly. "We look like a real family." On Thursday, Petey decided he needed to interview the neighbors about me. He prepared a questionnaire like a real reporter. 1. What do you think of Buddy? 2. Has he ever done something nice for you? 3. Do you think he's a good dog? Mrs. Patterson was the first interviewee. "Buddy is the most well-behaved dog. He never barks at night. never makes a mess on the sidewalk, and always greets us with his tail wagging. Mr. Goldman, the bakery owner. That dog is special, kiddo. When you were younger and came to buy bagels alone, he always stayed by your side protecting you. A real guardian. Mrs. Rodriguez, the next-door neighbor. Buddy once barked all night when burglars were breaking into my house. He helped call the police. He's a hero. I had no idea I had such a reputation in the neighborhood. Watching Petey discover these things about me through the neighbor's eyes was exciting and made me proud. If you're enjoying following this friendship journey, don't forget to turn on channel notifications. Thursday evening, there was an important family meeting. Mike had called Lincoln Elementary School and spoken with the principal about the possibility of me participating in the presentation. "Peter," Mike said, sitting at the table where the boy was organizing his notes and photos, "I talked to your principal, Mrs. Thompson. She says you can bring Buddy on Friday." "Really?" Petey screamed so loud I jumped with fright. "Buddy's going to my school?" "Yes, but with some conditions," Sarah explained. "He needs to be very clean on a leash and you'll be completely responsible for him during the presentation." "I'm going to be the best responsible person in the world," Petey promised. "Buddy's going to be the best behaved dog that ever set foot in that school." We spent all Thursday preparing the details. Petey organized a photo album with handwritten captions, prepared a colorful poster with information about golden retrievers, and even wrote a short speech. "Buddy, tomorrow you're going to meet my school friends," he told me while brushing my fur until it shone. "You're going to like them. Miguel has a hamster, Carla has 2 cats, and Fernanda has a goldfish. But none of them will be as cool as you." Friday morning dawned clear and sunny, one of those perfect Chicago days for special activities. I woke up earlier than usual, anxious and excited without knowing exactly why. Petey also woke up before his alarm. "Buddy, it's today, it's our day." He gave me a quick bath, brushed my coat, put on my new blue bandana, the same color as the school uniform, and checked for the 10th time that my leash was properly adjusted. "You look so handsome, Buddy. My friends are going to love you." Mike decided to drive us all to school. A special occasion deserved special transportation. On the way, Petey reviewed his speech one last time. "My name is Peter, and this is my best friend, Buddy. He's a 4-year-old golden retriever, and he's been part of our family for 2 years. I chose to talk about him because," he paused, "because he taught me that real friendship is about being present, caring, and loving, without judgment." Arriving at school was triumphant. Several children ran to see us at the gate and I felt like a canine celebrity. My tail wouldn't stop wagging. "Peter, is this Buddy? He's huge. Wow, what beautiful fur. Can I pet him?" Petey assumed the role of official presenter with a confidence that surprised me. "You can pet him, but gently. He's very gentle, but you have to respect him." Miss Johnson received us at the classroom door. "Peter, what a special presentation you've prepared for us today. Miss Johnson, can I start?" And then, in front of all his 3rd grade classmates, Petey gave the presentation of his life. He talked about golden retrievers, showed the photos we'd taken during the week, read the neighbors' testimonials, and explained why I was his best friend. "Buddy isn't just a dog," he said, looking directly at his classmates. "He's my companion, my confidant, my protector. When I'm sad, he stays with me without asking why. When I'm happy, he celebrates with me. He taught me that true friendship is about accepting the other exactly as they are." There was an emotional silence in the classroom. Even I stayed quiet, sensing the importance of the moment. "And the most important thing," Petey continued, "is that he made me understand that we don't need to be perfect to be loved. I can make mistakes, I can have flaws, but for Buddy, I'm always special." Miss Johnson was visibly moved. "Peter, this was one of the most beautiful presentations I've ever heard in this school. You spoke about friendship with impressive maturity." The classmates lined up to get to know me better. Each child petted me, offered me water, and asked Petey questions about me. He answered them all with the pride of someone who knows their best friend like no one else. At the end of the morning, when it was time to go, Principal Mrs. Thompson called us to her office. "Peter, I wanted to congratulate you. Your presentation wasn't just about your dog. It was about important values like loyalty, care, and unconditional love. You showed emotional maturity of someone much older." On the way home, Petey couldn't stop talking about how perfect everything had been. "Buddy, you were the best helper in the world. You stayed quiet, let everyone pet you, and when Felipe asked if you knew tricks, you sat at just the right moment." That day marked a definitive turning point. Petey had transformed a potentially traumatic experience, being unfavorably compared to a dog, into a celebration of our special friendship. He had proven to himself, to his classmates, and to the entire school that our relationship was based on mutual love, respect, and care. 3 Sundays had passed since that special project at school, and our family routine had found a new balance. Petey had returned to being that cheerful and confident boy I'd always known, but now with an emotional maturity he didn't have before. I was lying on the patio, watching the maple leaves dance in the morning breeze, when I heard the phone ring. It was a Saturday in April, and the air was cooler than recent days, typical of the season change in Chicago. "Hello, Dad," Mike answered. "Oh, hi. How are you both?" I pay attention to the conversation, as I always do when it concerns Petey's grandparents. "Sure, you can come for lunch tomorrow. What are you bringing?" "Oh, the usual dessert. Great." Pause. "Dad, just one thing. You remember our conversation from a few weeks ago, right? About Peter." Another longer pause. "Perfect. See you tomorrow then. Bye." Mike hung up and called Sarah. "Honey, my parents are coming for lunch tomorrow. My dad says they want to make peace with Peter." "Make peace?" Sarah raised her eyebrows. "I hope it's sincere this time." "Me too. Peter doesn't deserve to go through another uncomfortable situation." Petey was in the backyard, playing with my new ball, the one he'd chosen at the pet store. When he learned the grandparents were coming on Sunday, his reaction surprised me. "That's great. I want to show them how I learned to take better care of Buddy," he said, running to hug his parents. "Grandpa and Grandma are going to see that I've improved a lot." Mike and Sarah exchanged a look of relief. Petey's positive attitude showed that the wounds were really healing. Sunday morning arrived with that golden light that only April in Chicago can provide. Less hot than March, but still with that Midwestern energy that makes everything seem more alive. I was particularly anxious. My canine instincts told me this Sunday would be special. Petey woke up earlier than usual and came looking for me in the kitchen. "Buddy, today's the day to show Grandma and Grandpa how we became an even better team." He had planned a special routine to show me off to his grandparents. During the week, we'd trained some basic commands he'd learned from the books he'd been given. Nothing too complex. Sit, lie down, shake, fetch the ball. But he was proud of our progress. "Sit, Buddy," he commanded, and I obeyed immediately. "Shake," I extended my right paw. "Very good. You're the smartest dog in the world." Sarah was preparing an elaborate barbecue, the kind that cooks all day on low heat and fills the house with aromas that make any American feel at home. The smell of brisket, corn, and baked beans mixed with the perfume of cherry blossoms that Petey had picked in the yard to decorate the table. "Mom, can I set the table today?" Petey asked. "Of course, sweetheart. Do you want to do something special?" "I want everything to look nice for Grandma and Grandpa. And can I put a water bowl for Buddy near the table? To show that he's also part of the family." Sarah's heart melted. "What a lovely idea, Peter. Of course you can." At 12 noon sharp, the doorbell rang. Petey ran to open the door, but this time without the nervous anxiety of previous Sundays. There was a calm confidence in him that made me proud. "Hi, Grandpa." "Hi, Grandma." He hugged them with genuine affection. "Want to see something cool that Buddy and I learned?" Grandpa Robert and Grandma Carol also seemed different. There was a more attentive posture, less critical. They carried a bag with ingredients for dessert. Homemade apple pie, Grandma Carol's specialty. "Of course, little guy. We want to see everything you two learned," said Grandma Carol, and for the first time I sensed genuine sincerity in her voice. Petey positioned me in the center of the living room and began our demonstration. Every command he gave, I executed perfectly. But the most beautiful thing wasn't the tricks. It was the loving way he communicated with me, always praising me, always rewarding me with pets. "Wow, Peter," exclaimed Grandpa Robert. "You've become a real trainer. Buddy is obeying perfectly." "It's not training, Grandpa," Petey corrected with wisdom that impressed me. "It's partnership. I learned that when you treat someone with love and respect, they want to cooperate with you." The phrase echoed through the silence of the room. Mike and Sarah smiled proudly. The grandparents were visibly moved by the depth of the observation. "You know what, Peter?" said Grandma Carol, crouching down to her grandson's height. "You're right. Respect and love work better than yelling and comparisons." During lunch, the atmosphere was completely different from that traumatic Sunday in March. The conversation flowed naturally, the laughter was genuine, and Petey participated actively, without fear of being judged. "Grandpa, want to know what happened at school this week?" Petey told about his presentation, about how his classmates loved meeting me, about how Miss Johnson had praised him. "What pride, little guy," said Grandpa Robert. "You expressed yourself very well. It must have been quite a presentation." It was. And you know what else? I learned that having a best friend like Buddy makes me a better person too. Folks, if you're getting emotional about this family transformation, leave a like on this video. I was lying next to Petey's chair, in my strategic position as always, when something unexpected happened. Grandma Carol dropped a piece of brisket on the floor right next to me. Normally, I would have grabbed the food immediately, but I looked at Petey first, waiting for his approval. "You can have it, Buddy, but gently, no rushing," he said lovingly. I took the brisket delicately and returned to my position. "Look at that," observed Grandpa Robert. "Buddy asked for permission before eating. He respects Peter as his leader, and Peter treats him like a friend, not just any animal," added Grandma Carol. "It's a beautiful relationship to see." Mike decided to take advantage of the positive moment to address an important topic. "Dad, Mom, I wanted to thank you for understanding our concern a few weeks ago. I know it wasn't easy to hear that you had hurt Peter." "Mike, son," Grandpa Robert put his hand on his son's shoulder, "you were right. We grew up in a different time, where comparisons and criticism were considered education. But that doesn't mean it was right. Peter taught us an important lesson," said Grandma Carol, looking at her grandson. "He showed us that real education comes from example, from love, from patience." Petey turned red with pride. He'd never heard his grandparents speak about him that way, as someone who had something to teach adults. After lunch, something happened that would forever be one of the most special moments in my canine memory. Grandpa Robert got up from the table and said, "Peter, how about you and Buddy teach me some of those commands you learned? I'd like to be able to interact better with him." Petey's eyes lit up. "Really, Grandpa? You want to learn?" "Yes. If he's so important to you, then he's important to me too." We spent the entire afternoon in the backyard, Petey teaching Grandpa Robert how to communicate with me, Grandma Carol watching, and even participating sometimes. She discovered that I loved ear scratches, something she'd never tried before. "Buddy, you really are a special dog," she told me, petting me with a tenderness she'd never shown. "You helped our family understand each other better." It wasn't true. I hadn't done anything except be myself. Who had made all the difference were those wonderful humans who learned to communicate with love, patience, and mutual respect. When it was time to say goodbye, the scene was completely different from previous Sundays. Instead of disguised relief, there was genuine nostalgia in the air. "Grandpa, Grandma, can you come back next Sunday?" Petey asked. "I want to teach Buddy more tricks, and I think you'll like to see them." "Of course, little guy. And how about you all come to our house next week too? Buddy can see our apartment," suggested Grandma Carol. It was the first time the grandparents specifically invited me to come along. I felt my tail wag with emotion. That night, while Petey brushed my fur before bed, he said something that perfectly summarized our entire journey. "Buddy, do you know what I learned? That being compared to you wasn't an insult. It was a compliment. Because you're loyal, loving, protective, and always there for those you love. If I can be half the friend you are, I'll be an incredible person." That was the night I understood that our story wasn't about a dog who comforted a hurt boy. It was about how an entire family learned that true love isn't measured by obedience or perfection, but by presence, care, and unconditional acceptance. The Sunday of Redemption had proven that people can change, that families can heal, and that sometimes a 4-year-old golden retriever can be the catalyst for profound transformations. I went to sleep that night next to Petey's bed, listening to his peaceful breathing, knowing that our family had found a new way to love each other, a gentler, more respectful, more truthful way. If this story is touching your hearts, share it with your families. It might inspire important changes. And for the first time in weeks, I slept completely at peace, dreaming of future Sundays filled with genuine laughter, warm hugs, and words that build instead of destroy. 6 months had passed since that Sunday of redemption, and as I watched Petey playing in the backyard on a sunny October morning, I can say with certainty that our family was completely transformed. Not just in the big things, but mainly in the small daily details that make all the difference. The boy who today runs barefoot through the grass, laughing loudly while throwing my ball high in the air, is the same one who months ago would shrink in his chair during Sunday dinners. But now he carries an unshakable confidence, not the arrogance of someone who's never been hurt, but the wisdom of someone who learned to value himself through unconditional love. "Buddy, catch!" he shouts at me, and I run after the ball with all the energy my 4 years of life allow. When I bring it back, he crouches down to pet my head and says, "Good boy, you never let me down, do you?" But this time, the phrase doesn't sadden me. Because now I know that when Petey says I never let him down, it's not a cruel comparison to his own limitations. It's a genuine recognition of our special bond. The entire house reflects this transformation. The photos from our school presentation are scattered around the living room. Petey proud beside me, his classmates petting me, Miss Johnson smiling. Sarah framed the photo she likes most. Me and Peter lying on the grass, hugging, with that genuine smile of those who found their place in the world. Mike arrives from work in mid-afternoon. He managed to negotiate a more flexible schedule to spend more time with family. One of the most important changes that happened was the realization that quality time is more valuable than anything material. "Hey there, dynamic duo," he greets us, referring to me and Petey. "What did you do special today?" "Dad, look." Petey runs to get a notebook. "I started writing a diary about Buddy. Every day I write down something cool he did or that we did together." He opens the notebook and reads some entries. Monday, Buddy comforted me when I got a bad grade in math. He stayed with me in my room until I stopped crying. Tuesday, I taught Buddy to fetch my sneakers. Now when I yell, "Buddy, where are my shoes?" he goes to my room and brings them. Wednesday, Buddy saved a baby bird that fell from its nest. He barked to get our attention but didn't hurt the little creature. Mike reads the entries with tears in his eyes. "Peter, what an amazing idea. You're documenting all your special moments together. It's because Miss Johnson said that true friendships deserve to be remembered, and I don't want to forget any moment with Buddy." The phone rings, interrupting our conversation. It's Grandpa Robert. "Hello, son? Everything okay? Listen, your mother and I were thinking, how about you all come for dinner here Saturday, and you can bring Buddy, of course. We bought a new bed for him to be comfortable." The transformation of the grandparents was perhaps the most surprising of all. Grandpa Robert, who had always been rigid and critical, discovered a patience with Petey that no one imagined existed. Grandma Carol, in turn, developed a genuine affection for me. She always has a special treat when she visits us. "Of course, Dad, we'd love to. Peter will be thrilled," Mike responds. And he was. "Grandpa bought a bed for Buddy? That means I can bring him to sleep over when we visit?" "Exactly. Your grandparents want Buddy to feel at home there too." That afternoon, while Sarah prepared dinner, she called me for a chat, something that had become routine between us. "Buddy, you know you saved this family, right?" she told me, sitting on the kitchen floor to be at my height. Not in a dramatic way like in movies, but in a real, everyday way. She petted behind my ears. "My weak spot. You taught us that unconditional love really exists. That loyalty has no price. That presence is worth more than words." Folks, if you've been following our journey from the beginning, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. Her voice broke. "But mainly you showed us that Peter was always perfect just the way he is. We just needed to stop looking for flaws and start celebrating his qualities." On Saturday, our visit to the grandparents' house was magical. Their apartment in Lincoln Park, which had always seemed formal and intimidating to me, had been transformed. There were toys for me scattered around the living room, water bowls strategically positioned, and yes, a soft little bed next to the couch. "Buddy, come see your new bed," said Grandma Carol with an enthusiasm I'd never seen in her. "I chose a really soft one so you'd be comfortable." I tested the bed. Perfect. Soft, warm, smelling like a new home. But what moved me most was seeing Petey and his grandparents interacting with a naturalness that seemed to have existed for years. "Grandpa, can I teach you that new trick Buddy learned?" "Of course, little guy. I love it when you teach me things about Buddy." During dinner, Grandpa Robert told a story that surprised us. "You know, Peter, I was talking to Mr. Johnson, the building doorman, about you two. He said he'd never seen a child take care of an animal with as much love as you take care of Buddy, that you always clean up if he makes any mess, always bring bags to pick up his poop." "Of course, Grandpa. It's my responsibility to take good care of him. Buddy depends on me. And he was right when he said you became an example for other children in the building. Many started treating their pets better after seeing how you two relate." Petey turned red with pride. "Really? I became an example?" "You always were an example, little guy. We just took too long to see it." The following Sunday, something happened that definitively marked the closure of our family healing journey. It was one of those perfect Chicago Sundays. Blue sky, cool breeze, ideal temperature for family meals. The grandparents arrived bringing not only the traditional dessert, but also a special gift for me, a new collar with an engraved tag, "Buddy, official member of the Johnson family." "Wow, how awesome," exclaimed Petey. "Now everyone will know that Buddy is part of our family." During lunch, The conversation flowed through diverse topics: school, work, vacation plans. But the most important thing was the tone of the conversation: respectful, loving, inclusive. When Petey spilled a little barbecue sauce on his shirt, the reaction was completely different from months ago. "No worries, sweetheart," said Sarah calmly. "I'll get you a clean shirt." "Yeah, little guy. Even adults get messy sometimes," laughed Grandpa Robert. "The important thing is that you're enjoying the delicious food." After lunch, Petey made an announcement that surprised us. "Hey, I have something important to say." He stood up, taking that serious posture he used for special moments. "I wanted to thank everyone for helping me understand something very important." Everyone stopped to listen. "When you said that even Buddy obeyed better than me, I got very sad. I thought it was something bad. But now I understand that you were right. Just not the way you thought." He crouched down and petted me. "Buddy really did teach me about obedience. But not blind obedience. He taught me about loyalty, about caring for those we love, about always being present. And you all," he continued, looking at his grandparents, "taught me that adults can also change, can also apologize, can also learn new things." That was very important to me. The silence that followed was emotional. Grandma Carol was visibly moved. Grandpa Robert discreetly wiped his eyes. Mike and Sarah exchanged proud looks. "Peter," said Grandma Carol with a broken voice, "you became a wise boy, and we learned a lot from you too." That afternoon, while everyone took naps in the living room after the hearty meal, I stayed awake observing my family. Petey slept on the couch with his head on Mike's lap. Sarah was reclining in the armchair, a peaceful smile on her face. The grandparents shared the love seat, Grandma Carol with her head on Grandpa Robert's shoulder. It was a scene of perfect peace. A family that had found its balance through lots of dialogue, patience, and mainly love. At 6 p.m., when the grandparents were getting ready to leave, Grandpa Robert called me over. "Come here, buddy. I want to tell you something." I approached, and he crouched down to my level. "You're a very special dog. Not just because you're well-trained or handsome, but because you brought our family closer together. Thank you for taking such good care of our little grandson." He petted my head with a tenderness that moved me. That 72-year-old man, raised in a time when displays of affection were rare, had learned to express genuine gratitude and love. That night, while Petey brushed my fur, our sacred nightly routine, he said something that perfectly summarized our journey. "Buddy, do you know what was the coolest thing about everything that happened? It wasn't just you and me becoming better friends. It was our whole family becoming more united. It was everyone learning to speak to each other with more love." He stopped brushing and looked into my eyes. "And you know what else? I don't want to be compared to anyone anymore. Not to you, not to other kids. I want to be Peter. The one who takes good care of his friends, who cares about his family, who's always learning new things." My tail wagged hard. That was exactly the lesson I hoped he would learn. Not about being better or worse than someone, but about being authentically himself. As he slept next to me that night, I thought about how an apparently cruel comparison had transformed into the origin of so much growth and love. Our story proved that families can heal, that words can both hurt and heal, and that unconditional love, whether from a dog, parents, or grandparents, has the power to transform people. I went to sleep with the certainty that Petey would grow up to be an adult who would choose his words carefully, who would treat others with respect, who would understand the value of presence and loyalty. And me? I would continue being simply Buddy, the golden retriever who was lucky enough to be part of a family that learned that true love isn't measured by comparisons, but by presence, care, and unconditional acceptance. Our journey had come to an end, but our legacy of love would continue forever, because some lessons once learned become part of who we are and influence all the generations that come after us.